In this chapter of One Piece, we have Prime Roger versus Prime Garp. And even more members of the Rocks Pirates have been revealed as they prepare for a summit war of their own. One Piece was on the cover of the magazine this week with plenty of other faces, namely a bunch of Pokemon companions. To promote the upcoming game Pokemon Legends ZA, Luffy, as the effective mascot of Shonen Jump, was paired with Pikachu, while Sakamoto Days, Kagurabachi, and Blue Lock were matched with the game's starter choices. There are a bunch of Mega Pokemon and fan favorites, including my personal favorite Pokemon, Clefairy. So I might have to check out Witch Watch after this. Sadly, I'm not too familiar with most of Jump's current lineup, but I will say that Ichi the Witch is incredible, and pairing it up with Mega Gallade is a great fit. We also received a poster-worthy color spread for One Piece. The wings of the Pirate King, past and future, are the primary focus, and look really cool. And this might just be one of Nami's best outfits. Oda really cooked with this one. We open up to a time before the Great Pirate Era, and in those days, a certain group of idols were quite the force to be reckoned with. Despite being the recent victims of a pirate attack, and Island's defenders were being scolded for being utterly useless and not fighting back. The culprits had taken everything they owned, but the hard-eyed men didn't mind at all. The pirates were just too much for them to handle. Unfortunately, the local marines hadn't fared any better. The crew responsible for the raids were none other than the Kuja Pirates. This band of gorgeous pirates was led by the Empress of Amazon Lily, a woman who was deeply admired by the members of her own crew and was getting tired of her own beauty. And this stunning figure was none other than Gloriosa, future member of the Rocks Pirates and eventually elderly advisor to Boa Hancock. So yeah, damn near every member of Rocks' crew ended up with a bad future design. The conceited Empress considered herself to be the picture of perfection. Her swooning subordinates even called her a goddess. She was unbearably cute, radiant enough to be like a flashbang to the mind, and a heart rate accelerant. A young Kuja by the name of Tritoma rushed over to her captain with a pile of new fan letters in hand. But that only made the Empress question the giant pile that was being handled elsewhere. Tritoma cheerfully informed her that they were all for Shaki. So Shaki was at least 100 times more popular than her captain. Tritoma would eventually become the Empress of Amazon Lily right before Boa Hancock, and she died of love sickness. Gloriosa immediately began pouting since Shaki was upstaging her as captain, and even her angry face was adorable. The only woman who was more revered for her beauty than Gloriosa was her own first mate, Shakuyaku. Just then, Gloriosa was warned about the approach of an enemy ship, but instead of rushing to arms, the Empress began to blush and admire. A certain man's nervous voice caught their attention. It was none other than Captain Gol D Roger of the Roger Pirates. They had come for only one thing, and they demanded that the Kuja Pirates hand her over. A young Roger proclaimed over Snail Megaphone that today would be the day that they would finally claim Shakuyaku as their own. And despite their brilliantly mustached Jolly Roger, Roger himself was still at the beginning of his facial hair journey here. Gloriosa huffed. She insisted that being loved by a woman like her should be enough for him. Soon enough, the two crews collided, and it looks like the Roger Pirates had that huge egg even back then. That's when a door was kicked open by a questioning beauty. Roger's jaw dropped at the sight of her. Well beyond the admiration of their captain, the Kuja Pirates were moved to tears at the sight of the first mate. Her every move was captivating, and all of the Roger Pirates were totally smitten. Plenty of them had arrived with flowers in hand, and bickered over which one she should take. But in the presence of her beauty, flowers wilted, birds lost their songs, and people began to fight one another without her even lifting a finger. As far as we know, she doesn't have a devil fruit. Her beauty was just that overwhelming. So maybe this is a unique expression of Haki. Shaki called out to Gyaban, and just having her mention his name was overwhelming. She simultaneously kicked the axe wielder in the face. She then remarked about how long it had been since she's seen Roger. The young captain shook as he tried to defend his crewmate's honor. But even the future king of the pirates was no match for the most beautiful woman in the world. The Kuja first mate just lit up above him. She was beautiful enough to humble even the strongest warriors of the era. She lifted Roger's stubbled chin and let him know that she would never submit to the captivity of another. The ladies lost their mind over how pretty and cool she was. Shaki told them to plunder the other crew's treasure, and the girls were ready to add their souls to the pile. Gloriosa tried to hold Roger's attention and make it clear that she's the one who's actually into him, but he told the Empress to back off since she was blocking his view of Shaki, which really frustrated the Kuja captain. Shaki mentioned how difficult it must be for Rayleigh as the first mate of his crew. He agreed since he was surrounded by idiots. She just shot him a wink. The swordsman flinched, but didn't sprout hard eyes like the others. So yeah, Rayleigh managed to secure the baddest baddie the world had ever seen. And impressively, she still looks incredible past the age of 60. From there, Gloriosa was warned that yet another ship was approaching them. This time, it was the Navy. Some of the Marines rushed to snap a picture of the infamous pirate cruise. Meanwhile, the Kuja were urged to pick up the pace with their looting. They were to leave nothing behind. Roger also wanted them to finish up quickly since it was time for them to get out of Dodge. But Roger's tune changed the moment he realized that the ship headed their way actually belonged to Garp. Furious, Roger rallied his men with a new plan. It was time for Prime Roger to go head-to-head against Prime Garp, the future Pirate King versus the future hero of the Marines. Their clash was explosive. Neither held back and totally sought to crush the other. They shouted each other's names with unbridled fury. These eventual legends of the Great Pirate Era were evenly matched and unrelenting, fueled by hockey and the hot-blooded passion of youth. And despite making their exit, Gloriosa collapsed soon after. Back then, the Kuja pirates were more popular than ever. You simply couldn't talk about this era without mentioning them. Shaki referred to her captain as her sister and was there to comfort her aching heart, a scene that the rest of the crew was all too eager to witness. These beautiful pirates were effectively the idols of their world. Their wanted posters were valuable collector's items. Stalkers taking pictures of them was a common issue that they faced. But not long after this encounter, things took a major shift. Shakuyaku became the new empress of Amazon Lily, and with that, her popularity grew exponentially. It seems like Gloriosa's pursuit of Roger never worked out, so she shifted to trying to win over Whitebeard's affection and join the Rocks Pirates. Sadly, that doesn't seem to have worked out for her either. So I can totally see why she was so critical of Boa Hancock's interest in Luffy. We then shift to Ida's tavern on Elbaf. After his ship capsized, Loki nearly drowned. He was saved, but his rescuers were admittedly hesitant to help the troublesome prince, namely because of how poorly he acts in his father's absence. King Harold apologized to them for the trouble and thanked them for saving his son. He called for the boy to pull himself together. Meanwhile, Ida was furious. She shouted at the fool for hesitating to help a child in need. She questioned how he would feel if the boy had died. The overly obtuse king tried to settle her down since Loki was the one who selfishly took the ship by his lonesome. But the giant mother did not care. She was prepared to drown the sailor 100 times over for his mindset. Exhausted, Loki croaked that he didn't ask for anyone to save him. But instead of showing concern for a child who clearly didn't cherish his own life, the ignorant captain complained about the boy's bad attitude. Ida recognized that between the loss of his mother and the frequent absence of his father, that Loki must be pretty lonely. So I guess as a foreign giant, Ida was the only one on the island with any sense. Unfortunately, Loki took her words as an insult, so he called her an old hag and told her to shut her trap. Laughing, she suggested that he live with her and Harudin, but the estranged half-siblings vehemently rejected the idea, one that probably would have saved them a lot of pain later on. Loki was convinced that Ida was just an opportunistic gold digger who planned on weaseling her way into the castle by pretending to be motherly. That enraged his brother even more. King Harold was unnerved by his son's foul mouth. He insisted that Loki apologize and consider Ida's feelings. However, Ida was totally unfazed. She just couldn't get over their cuteness. But his words did make Ida's little helper Mato cry. She really didn't like it when Loki said mean things to Ida. Ida was grateful to her and all the kind and beautiful people in the world. And these days, Mato is the bartender of Ida's bar. Loki was fed up with Elbaf. He called them all weak and dirty. Instead of being like them, he made it clear that he would be free like his hero, Rox. After that, whenever Rox visited Elbaf to try and recruit King Harold, Loki would try and join them. But sadly, it never worked out. He figured that the other giants should be happy that he'd be leaving for the sea. He let them know that the hatred was mutual. Months after the Rox pirates claimed Pirate Island as their base of operations, someone had arrived in search of them. When the person expressed their desire to join them, another pirate claimed that they wouldn't even get the chance to see them. After all, they were considered to be the ocean's all-stars of evil. Another man pointed to the massive fish-shaped boulder in the middle of the island and claimed that that's where they were. So before it became a skull, it was referred to as a fish. Another pirate expressed that the further into the island they go, the crazier the pirates they meet would be. Seeking out the Rox pirates was practically a death wish. He then proceeded to kick and mock the hooded stranger, totally unprepared for what would come next. It turns out that this hooded stranger was Kyo the Wicked, the man who would eventually come to be known as Silver Axe. So here's his proper reveal. He was also a hitman who held the foolish pirate's entire head in the palm of his hand. The many weaklings recognized him as being Shiki's rival, and immediately backed off. As the strong continued to gather around Rox, strong recruits began seeking him out like moths to a flame. Suddenly, the giant fish boulder received a makeover in the form of 2 giant holes. Rox took in the view and scenery of his island. That was enough to convince him that blasting a few holes in the place was a good idea. He expected his fellows to back him up on that, but they just stayed silent instead. Before doing that, Rox was in the middle of telling them that he was in pursuit of 2 devil fruits. In the case of one, he expected it to be on Elbaf, a fruit that would only show its true power if King Harold were the one to eat it. And presumably, this is the secret devil fruit that Loki has now eaten. So Luffy managing to recruit him will be even more vital than we previously imagined. As for the other devil fruit they're after, it's probably Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi. But aside from those fruits, Captain John chimed in that they would need the Galera giant shipwrights too. He's heard legends about them in the past. Charlotte Linlin, master of the streets and sheets, and future Yonko Big Mom, was making use of all her contacts to find them. But there were no leads when it came to the army of frozen giants. Whitebeard, on the other hand, didn't see the point in chasing after an army of the dead. Linlin's buddy Strusen agreed since there was no way for them to bring the giants back. But Rox didn't care for their pessimism in the face of his dreams. Barbell, a catfish fishman, added that even if they did come back to life, there would be no reason for them to follow Rox, which only made their captain further insist on recruiting King Harold. A brash young Kaido questioned why they couldn't just use their strength to force them to listen, something he figured they might as well do to King Harold too. And to that, Rox was outraged. He hit the bullheaded fool with the bottom of his boot and told him to never say that again. Kaido had to be held back as Rox put his hand on his sword. Shiki stood between them with his swords drawn, insisting that they both cut it out. They claimed this island not too long ago, so he wasn't about to let them trash the place. A group like theirs was bound to collapse eventually, but now was not the time for that. Captain John happily agreed. They needed to control themselves, at least until they benefit a bit more from working together. Either way, Rox was sure to let Kaido know that King Harold is his good pal, and he promised to crush Kaido himself if he ever dared to say something that stupid again. With King Harold matching his strength, having a strong dream of his own, and playing hard to get despite hosting their cruise several times over, Rox has grown very fond of him. But with all that, the Rox pirates have assembled. Their captain claimed that Elbaf would be the key to defeating the Holy Land, further emphasizing the importance of the Straw Hat's positioning right now. If his crewmates didn't agree, he didn't want them around. Whether or not they were with him on the Day of Destiny was up to them. And oh man, this shot is just so cool. But boy oh boy, just look at Ganzui. That brother is starving for some Big Mom cake. If they had the guts, Rocks invited them all to follow along, because he promised to take them all to the summit of the world. And I'll tell you man, it is downright tragic to know that such an awesome gang of villains ultimately failed in the end. This flashback continues to be peak, and I just hope that as his successors, the Blackbeard Pirates and Cross Guild can even be a quarter as cool as these guys are. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.